Hi, my name is Serge Koenig. I work for Sauk County Conservation Department, and I've been working in that capacity for the past 27 years. Grazing is one of the big things that we really advocate for here in Sauk County. My journey into this field started in Madagascar, a half a world away. My family was there, and due to some political instability, it was deemed necessary to move the family to the US. And so we've been here for nearly 40 years. But growing up in Madagascar, we spent time in the woods and in the field all the time. We basically lived outside, and the house was a place to crash for a few hours and then live outside once again. And so spent a lot of time in the field building slingshots, bow and arrows, hunting, cooking game out in the wild, taking care of animals, and helping grow crops and husk rice and plant rice and all of those things. And so I've had an addiction to the outdoors ever since my early childhood. And when I came to the US, it was a natural fit for me to go dive into something that I felt a strong connection to. I spent 4.5 years at UW-Stevens Point, got a degree in watershed management. I couldn't decide if I wanted to just work with wildlife or fisheries or trees, and watershed management kind of seemed to fit well. It encompasses everything. And then I got a soils minor also from Stevens Point. And this was the first job out of college that I got, and I've stayed here. It's been just such a good fit for me. I kind of like the rural landscape, and right now the colors are out. It's beautiful out today, and this is the stuff that inspires me to do what I do. Early on in my career, I was somewhat interested in rotational grazing, but we had a big toolbox that we picked from, and it was just a small tool. It was like a little screwdriver in the toolbox. Because I monitor the streams in Sauk County, and I have been doing that for the past 25 years or so, I would say, it was pretty obvious that these practices were making some difference, but they weren't making the transformative differences that we needed to make in order to cure the ills of runoff pollution. Our waterways are still running brown, chocolate brown. And we're still seeing a lot of greening up of our lakes and reservoirs. And so obviously this wasn't working. And I think when all of us came to realize that the health of our soils is really kind of where a lot of this starts, that we needed to change course, that we needed to look for ways to improve the health of our soil, to reduce the volume of runoff, basically. And you look through the data, then it was pretty obvious that permanent vegetation was one of the main answers. And so when you look at all the soil health principles, well, managed grazing checks all of them and then some. And so it just made sense to go right to that. It's not to say we don't advocate for no-till, which we do, and cover crop, which we do, and crop rotation, which we do. We do all those things, but I think if we can skip those steps and go right to grass, I think you can maybe avoid some headaches at the same time. I find it very, very rewarding for my job, but I just get a kick out of watching landowners get in touch with this stuff again, get in touch with the natural world again, and helping them realize this is why I farm. The job isn't really about conservation. It's really about working through the people stuff. It just always is. No matter how you slice it, it's always working through the people stuff. And when we approach it that way, just things work better. And the conservation just comes along for the ride. Hardly ever do I actually talk about climate change. I don't talk about erosion. We don't talk about water quality. We just talk about quality of life, goals, grazing as an alternative, but like what you want, and talk about the finances, and all this other stuff just comes along for the ride. No matter what you're doing, no matter what you choose to do, it kind of has to hit you here. It really has to hit you deep. And you can call it spirituality, you can call it, I don't know what you want to call it and what word you want to use, but it has to hit you deep and it has to move you at a deeper level. If we don't get that right, it doesn't matter how logical it seems on paper or even on the spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. That's why it has to be coupled with like life stuff. It has to be, and we have to be comfortable talking about that. And it's uncomfortable. I know that. You don't think I'm uncomfortable doing it? Of course I'm uncomfortable doing it. Look where I am, you know? But you just got to fight through the discomfort. And, you know, so like when it hits you here, then you can fight through anything. You know, you can fight through the discomfort and do what the job requires. That's what the job requires. You're always reading people. And if you can't do that, it's really hard to do this job effectively, I would say. You have to be always tuned in constantly. And so, and of course it comes easier for some than others, but it's just like any skill. It's practice. A want to, and then a willingness to practice it. You've got to practice it. It doesn't just happen by itself. And yep, you're going to get yelled at a few times. Yep, it's not going to be pleasant. And I've had all those things. But like, again, if you're driven in here, if that, whatever you want to call it, if that drive is there and you know your why, and that's what we want to help our producers figure out, what is your why? Why are you doing this? You better know yours. Because, you know, it's not always smooth for you either. But like, if you know your why, it's so much easier to help others figure out what their why is. And then we go.